Hey you, Bravo's now in Canada.
I just got chills.
If you know Bravo,
I love that. You love that?
you know Vanderpump Rules,
Why does it have to get so complicated?
Summer House,
Don't activate me because you've not seen me activated.
Below Deck,
I'm not your friend, I'm your captain.
Top Chef,
Hi, Chef.
and Housewives. Definitely Housewives.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this.
Bravo, now available.
It's insane.
Subscribe now with your TV service provider. Fall in Canada has never been hotter.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
He's in the building!
Drink the moment. Drink it.
I said, empty your mind.
Coquettish and coy. Ow. Ow.
What?
And there's people that are dying.
The wickedly talented.
More than great. It was historic.
Crack is
Oh, good for you. I have to apologize.
One of the hottest.
Hello, and welcome to The Reheat, a podcast that re-examines the hottest celebrity news and scandals of yesteryear and asks, how could we react to the same events if they transpire today? I'm your co-host, Sadaf.
And I'm your co-host, Sarah Sahagian. This week, we will be reevaluating Lena Dunham, the auteur who shot to stardom in the early 2000s and quickly became one of the most controversial creators in America. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Lena received Roman Polanski or Woody Allen levels of scrutiny, but was it justified? Has the time come to relitigate Lena Dunham? That's the key question we will address today as we dissect three of the biggest scandals to which Lena has been party. So, Sadaf, are you now, or have you ever been, a fan of Lena Dunham's work? Her movies, her TV show, her book, her podcasts?
Can I just start by saying I love that you said three of her biggest scandals because there's just so many.
Yeah.
It's just fact. To answer your question, I actually feel proud to say that I've been a fan, which I know, again, as you've said, is controversial. But listen, I loved her book. I thought it was really fantastic, especially in an era when we were getting memoir after memoir from so many female comedians and writers. Hers really stood out. I also loved her newsletter, Lenny Letter. I think she's an unbelievable writer. I loved Girls. I loved her movies. I have a lot to say about the criticism she's faced. I know we're going to get to it, but I think there's a reason that she's been put on the level of Woody fucking Allen, as you put it, which is really, really wild. But I'm also proud to say that I was there from the beginning because I feel like some people are turning around recently. But we will get to it, right, Sarah?
We will get to it. We will have a long, in-depth, cathartic conversation about what all of this work meant to us and how we reacted to the controversies and what we think today.
Yes, light a fire. Well, it's too hot for a fire, but get comfy.
Yeah, exactly. Pour yourself an iced coffee or whatever seasonal beverage is appropriate when you're listening to this. We don't know. You might discover us in February. Whatever you want, but get comfortable.
Yes, seconded.
And just as a warning, I might be a little bit emotional today because it was my 4-year-old's last day of preschool. She's starting big school next week.
Big school.
She was fine when I was taking the last day of preschool photos of her. I was a sobbing mess. And I'm very proud of her. Her superlative at preschool graduation was biggest imagination. So,
Sarah,
I'm a
I told you this, but I am so proud of that kid because that superlative means she could become a writer, which obviously I would love for her.
Exactly. Maybe one day we'll do an episode on her scandals.
I do feel that Bea has a scandal in her future, I dare say. That is that.
It'd be a very creative scandal.
Yes, it would be.
It might be a conflict of interest for her mother to do an episode
doing it anyway,
relitigating her past scandals. But you know what? That would be new level momager behavior.
I think absolutely, and I'm here for it, and I'm ready. We're gonna do it.
Exactly. All right, go team. So in re-examining Lena Dunham, we have to return to her origin story, her preschool days, her upbringing. Born in 1986 to successful artists Carol Dunham and Laurie Simmons, Lena attended the prestigious St. Anne's School, where she met future co-star Jemima Kirk. Lena excelled at writing from a young age, winning a Scholastic Art and Writing Award when she was a teenager, which is actually quite impressive.
Yeah.
Like, those awards are sought after.
Yeah.
In Sarah Thornton's 33 Artists in 3 Acts, Lena said of her upbringing, "When I was little, I thought the New York art world was everything." Lena grew up watching her parents go to studios and create work. This was something that she felt was, just a normal part of life. And she wanted to be a visual artist too. But she later realized that in the modern world, the audience for art is just a small segment of really rich people. There are so many barriers to experiencing modern art. It's not particularly accessible. And so Lena set her sights on a medium with more reach, film and television. She went on to graduate from liberal arts school, Oberlin College, in 2008 with a degree in creative writing. Upon graduating from university and moving back into her parents' apartment, she was inspired to write the semi-autobiographical Tiny Furniture, a film where Lena portrays Aura, a post-college kid who is aware she's now an adult, but still finds it hard to act like one. Shot on a shoestring budget, the film follows Aura as she struggles with work, friendship, dating, and living with a mom who would rather that her grown-up child just move out. All the stuff you have to navigate when you're a creative upper middle class kid with no clear career path. Lena's real-life mother, Laurie Simmons, portrays her mom in the movie, and her younger sibling, Cyrus, plays her overachieving younger sibling. So there was a lot of verisimilitude.
True
when
to
you heard
life.
those conversations, you're like, yeah, you probably said that to each other at dinner yesterday.
Yeah.
Jemima Kirk also portrays a cooler, edgier friend who is probably a bad influence on Aura. Sound familiar?
She was definitely a bad influence on Lena when they were growing up. Or maybe like a better influence.
I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Now she seems so calm and collected.
Yeah.
When I watch interviews with Jemima Kirk, I feel like a better person. She has this like amazing yoga teacher energy. Like,
That's
she
such
just
a good
feels,
way to put it.
she just is soothing. But I feel like she saw some things in her teen years if she's gotten to that place.
I think
now.
so too.
So this was a film that shot Lena into stardom, like pretty much instantaneously. It premiered at South by Southwest in 2010, where it won the Best Narrative Feature Award. It received pretty universal acclaim, which is rare for a first-time filmmaker and rare for anyone, really. A review by Henry Barnes in The Guardian refers to it as, quote, extremely well written, often funny, and very touching. Betsy Sharkey of the LA Times was less effusive, but still said this, quote, for all the narcissistic meandering, and there is a good deal of that, Dunham has made the subtext intriguing, which is to say you will likely find yourself thinking more about the film than you expected. Ultimately, Tiny Furniture received so much buzz that Lena received a 2010 New York Times profile by none other than David Carr. And this was before Girls premiered, right? Like, she was getting so much positive attention. The headline of that piece read, "Young filmmakers' search for worth is rewarded." So that's very validating.
By the way, can I just brag for 2 seconds? Totally unrelated and yet not. When I was in grad school, I got to go to some classes taught by David Carr, who was just so incredible. Yeah, before he passed. And I love him so much. I think he's incredible, or was incredible. I hate to say it. So when he says this, like, I want to trust him, I really do.
Yeah, and you know what? Having watched Tiny Furniture, it is pretty astounding for a first-time director. She has a voice. Like, already, she has a message, but it's not didactic. It's a really wonderful debut, and it's rare that somebody debuts with something that's both entertaining and thought-provoking. So I get why she received this much acclaim. I really do.
I do too. I actually quite liked that movie. I gotta rewatch it because I wonder how it holds up now.
I've rewatched it fairly recently, and it holds up well. Like, it's this character who is a bit spoiled, but also kind of knows she's a bit spoiled.
Yeah.
It's realistic. It's a realistic portrait of a certain slice of life, and I don't think it's pretending to be anything other than that. Here's a question for you, Sadaf. Would we call Lena Dunham a Nepo baby? So while she shot Tiny Furniture on a tiny, tiny micro budget. It's not like her parents bankrolled her to shoot like an $8 million indie movie the first time she directed. She did get a lot of attention because her parents were well known by the right sort of artists. So should we call her Nepo baby? Is that fair? Where does she fit on the Nepo baby spectrum, do we think?
I love Nepo questions. I don't know how the New York art scene operates, but I highly doubt that these two people had much to do with her come up in film and TV. Just because, they're very much in the arts world. It's a different world from film and TV. They just happen to both be different kinds of crafts. I don't know. I don't think there's much of a connection there. I do think they probably granted her the privilege and the creative freedom to openly explore the arts. I think that's something we don't talk about enough when it comes to nepotism. I mean, she went to Oberlin, right? There are no brown kids who go to Oberlin. I mean, maybe there's one of you who's listening right now. Please email me. I want to talk to you about your life. But I don't see many people of color, generally speaking, mass attending arts colleges like this. It's just not something we get to be told we can do. So I think there's certainly that's a factor. Like, I decided to do journalism and my parents didn't talk to me for quite a while, okay? Because I chose journalism, the craft of writing, okay? But yeah, I think she's on the spectrum, but it's low. She's not a Jaden Smith. She's not a Dakota Johnson, right? Yeah, what do you think, Sarah?
I mean, I don't know if I would call it being a Nepo baby or just like privileged. I think if her parents had been well-connected New York lawyers, she probably would have had the same advantages in life, right? Like she was connected to people that she went to her fancy private school with, like Jemima Kirk, whom she could call to be in a movie. Her parents let her move back in with them so she could film this movie on a shoestring budget, right? She had like upper middle class kid privilege is what I would say. But you know what? Some upper middle class kids don't have vision and don't have a ton of talent, but she had vision and was able to make this movie. So I still think the movie is worthy of celebration, and you can acknowledge that she had certain advantages that somebody who couldn't just kind of work a fake job and while living with their parents in one of the most expensive cities in the world, like, wouldn't have. So I but I wouldn't call her a Nepo baby. I've always thought that was a little bit ridiculous when people thought that she was kind of the original Nepo baby.
It's an
right?
excuse.
She received that criticism before anyone else did, really.
She did, and I think it's an excuse that a lot of people use just to rage on her.
Yeah, exactly. And as we will discuss going forward, people seem to find any excuse, some of them valid and some of them not, to rage on this woman.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to get into it.
So after her sudden success on the back of a $25,000 indie film, Lena did what she called the couch and water bottle tour of LA. So she met with all the executives. They all said they wanted to work with her. And she has said in interviews, like, she believed that was true. She didn't understand that people in Hollywood just lie.
Yeah.
However, what helped Lena succeed when so many other indie darlings stay in obscurity was that Judd Apatow saw Tiny Furniture and loved it.
There was a time when like Judd Apatow watching your work would like make you explode. Remember that? That era is already over.
Yeah, I don't like Judd Apatow, but I mean, I would like him to produce a project of mine because he has lots of money.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Judd Apatow, I will take your money.
Sir Sahagan is calling, sir. Suddenly we find you very funny.
Exactly. Can you produce my Hard R limited series about the Wiggles?
Oh,
it's all in here.
Okay, no, see, now we need to get Seth Rogen on the phone because I love that man and he would be right on that, I think.
You know what? Let's make it happen.
Yeah, sorry, Judd, never mind.
Really feel this would be good.
Throwing you back in the draft.
Okay, so the legendary director of Knocked Up and the 40-Year-Old Virgin decided to serve as executive producer of Lena's first high-profile project, Girls. In fact, Lena says he was the one who chose the series name, which I find interesting because it's received a lot of criticism, right? It feels very universal, like we're speaking for all girls, and the show is about a very specific group of girls. It's not particularly diverse. It's not particularly inclusive of people from different backgrounds. And so that was one of the things she's been critiqued on. It wasn't even her mistake. I find that interesting.
Yeah. Blame Judd.
Blame Judd. One of the titles Lena was workshopping was Girls Like Us, which is more fitting. For their part, HBO decided that Lena, who was still in her early 20s, needed the help of Jenny Connor, an experienced film and TV writer who served as co-showrunner. So Jenny was kind of like, creative nanny. After an extensive casting process where both Jenny Slate and Amy Schumer auditioned for the role of Shoshana alone,
That is wild.
Girls debuted. I know. Which just shows you how few parts there are for funny women in Hollywood. Like every comedic actress you've ever heard of auditioned for this role. Even Amy Schumer, who later said, like, I was obviously too old, but I guess they read for it anyway.
Have fit in anyway. I can see Jenny Slate having fit in, actually. And she did guest, if I'm not wrong, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. She did guest.
I love Jenny Slate. Story for another time.
A story for another time. The show debuted on HBO on April 15th, 2012. In 2018, Dunham told makers, quote, "The parts I enjoy playing are not always available to me, and so I have to write them," which is something I think a lot of writers feel, especially writers who cast themselves in their projects. If she hadn't written her own roles, Lena said she would probably have been left playing, quote, "the sassy best friend who can't stay away from the buffet." And so she wrote a world where women didn't have to be thinner than average or have a perfect manicure to be the center of attention. Girls followed a ragtag friend group of 4 young women stuck in extended adolescence. For 6 seasons, many of us watched Hannah, Marnie, Jessa, and Shoshana gallivant around Brooklyn, accidentally doing crack, experimenting with different careers, having lots of on-screen sex, and generally just messing up without learning very much. Many of the show's previously unknown stars, from Allison Williams to Adam Driver, are now household names, so casting-wise, this show did a great job, just home run. The cast has left an indelible mark on popular culture. In the series premiere of Girls, Hannah, the 24-year-old protagonist portrayed by Lena herself, tries to convince her upper-middle-class parents to continue bankrolling her fledgling writing career. Her justification? Hannah boldly declares, "I think I might be the voice of my generation." And while that line was clearly played for jokes, remember she was on drugs when she said it, it was arguably treated like Lena herself announcing that she was speaking for all millennials with Girls. And some people seem to agree. TV critic Emily Nussbaum wrote in New York Magazine, "As a person who has followed, for more than 20 years, recurrent, maddening debates about the lives of young women, the series felt to me like a gift." Nussbaum describes the series as like nothing else on TV. Lena herself later told British Vogue, quote, "I felt like treating a group of women this age as a viable group to chronicle was sort of political in its own right." Across the pond, American Vogue referred to Lena as the Queen of Comedy in a 2014 cover story. Sadaf, where were you when Girls debuted? Did you watch it? Did you like it? Did you agree with all this acclaim? And most importantly, did you relate to any of the characters? And if so, which one are you?
Ooh, good question. Okay, I loved Girls. I loved it very much. I know that a new generation is discovering it now and they're loving it. And actually, millennials are rewatching, and some of my own friends, I'm talking to you, who now were like, "Oh, it's actually pretty good." Okay, well, I thought that from the very beginning. All right. And I have to say, though, as a South Asian woman, I think maybe it's surprising to say, but I did find it relatable. I found it relatable in the way that I find Sex and the City relatable. It does happen because they covered so many different issues. And again, sorry guys, but Omar, my dog, is in the back waiting for treats at every given second, so you'll hear him. But I think they covered a gamut of issues. I found so much of it relatable. I still do now that I've started to rewatch, actually, even more so. I also, can we just remember that her character Hannah does edit herself in that moment, and she's like, at least she might be a voice of a generation. Or I will do a further edit and say a voice of a generation, which she was. Whether we like it or not, the people who come to define a generation, especially artists and writers, it doesn't always mean that we support them and we relate to them. It just means that they were iconic and representative of that period. Maybe not for everybody, but for a time and of a group of people. That said, I want to say that Girls was so well written, and I would even say I can't believe I'm going to say this. No, I do believe I'm going to say this. It was quite genius, in my opinion. It was really funny. The dialogue was incredible. And as you said, Sarah, she discovered Adam Driver, for the love of God. Adam Driver, who is now in a Coppola movie, who is probably going to have a bunch of Oscars before I die. Like, give her the damn kudos. That man better thank her in that speech, because he doesn't really give her the credit himself.
He doesn't. He's not super gracious about Lena Dunham.
I will also say, I'm really on my soapbox, but I will also say that show, in my opinion, had some of the best television episodes that we've ever seen. So, like, Panic in Central Park, the Patrick Wilson episode. I'm not being facetious, actually. I'm not exaggerating. I really think it was incredible. And I'm so glad that people are revisiting it now and seeing how great it was. And I really encourage all of you to have minds of your own, because herd mentalities are dangerous, especially when it comes to art and the internet. If you like something, that's okay. You don't need to follow what everybody else is saying.
And the other important thing to remember, and why I appreciate this show, is even the cast has said, we made a show about terrible people, right? Or at least people who are giving in to terrible impulses, which is true of many people in their early 20s. And so they're not role models. It's not like Lena Dunham was showing you these people because she thought that they were heroes, right? It is a show that critiques the characters, right? Like they put them in situations intentionally that are meant to humble them and change them. It's a show about extended adolescence, how a certain amount of that can be stubbornness, just the refusal to grow up. And then eventually in the finale, Lena Dunham's character grows up. And what I love about that finale,
spoiler alert,
one of the best finales, spoiler alert. If you have not seen the finale, skip ahead a minute. What I love about that finale is she has just had a baby, and which is true to life. She grows up a little bit too late, because she grows up when he's like 2 months old,
right.
Which is realistic, right? You kind of always grow up just slightly later than you're supposed to. And she comes to that revelation when she sees that girl who's in a fight with her mom, that actually the girl is wrong and she's on the side with her mother, right? Where she finally realizes that she can't relate to teens anymore, and she's no longer an extended adolescent. She relates to the middle-aged mom. And that is how a lot of us realize we're adults, kind of by fluke, when we realize, oh, I find this young person, their perspective, to be wrong, to be incorrect, and that's surprising me, right? It's a surprise to her that she's an adult as much as it is to the audience. So, spoiler section done.
Can I actually wait? Spoiler section back on. I actually have complicated feelings about that finale, but who knows? Maybe we'll do like a whole dissect on this at another time. But I'm with you. I think it was a really good, from beginning to end, a really excellent trajectory for the most part. I don't really love women giving birth as a plot device. I thought that was a little bit lazy on Lena's part, but I don't know. I also see your side of it too. I think there was some beauty in it as well. God, I don't know. I love that show. What can I say? Okay, spoiler section over.
Yeah. So, I mean, I quite liked the show from the beginning. I was never a super fan. I did defend it a lot because I found that it received a bizarre level of criticism from people who really, the subtext was they didn't think that a show like that should be on TV, right? Like, they just didn't.
Well, you know what's funny too, and you mentioned this earlier, that they've all acknowledged that it was all terrible people. That's the point. Now, since then, we've had Succession, we've had Industry, which are also all about terrible people, and everybody applauds them for that. But Girls was written off. I find that very funny.
Yeah, one of the most feminist things it did is it showed that you can be a terrible person no matter who you are. You can be a 24-year-old super cute Brooklyn girl and still be a terrible person.
There you go. Shocker. Shocker.
While Girls received effusive praise from some corners, the series immediately attracted its fair share of critics, and some of the critics were entirely legit. Some of the people who criticized it, less so. For example, Lena got a lot of flack for daring to be naked on the show. There's nothing wrong with that. Those were realistic sex scenes. They were relatable. They were funny. They were hot. In Hollywood, it's still very rare for people who can't fit into a sample size to appear naked on screen, but Hannah was constantly engaging in pivotal scenes without her clothes on, to which I say, so what? That's just life. People in general, of all shapes and sizes, have to take their clothes off sometimes.
Amen.
Right?
We all get naked. Sorry.
Exactly. In terms of legitimate critiques of the series, many people criticized the show for its lack of diversity. In fact, the discourse surrounding girls became the first scandal Lena had to weather, I would say. I mean, there was the scandal about the nudity, but that was BS. Yeah. And I think, history has proven that that was horrible, and everyone who critiqued her for that was a jerk. But the scandal regarding its lack of diversity was legitimate, and there were interesting conversations to be had there. So Kendra James, who is a writer and a Black graduate of Oberlin herself, she even overlapped with Lena Dunham while there. She wrote this superb essay, Dear Lena Dunham, I Exist. And in this essay, she addressed both Dunham's lack of diversity and Emily Nussbaum's praise of the show that suggested it was for us, by us, but the show only starred for white women.
By the way, so, I do want to add there that also just a little media literacy tip. When you get a culture critic who's saying something like for us, by us, that's a little reminder of who they are writing for, right? And who they view as their audience. So I don't like Emily Nussbaum particularly because I don't think she writes for me, right? But maybe she writes for you. That's okay. But that's a good way to kind of discern whose commentary you should be reading and that you might actually find valuable.
Yeah. Welcome back to the reheat, Taylor's version.
I know you Swifties have been waiting.
Thanks to Rogers, we are giving away 2 tickets to see Taylor Swift the Eras Tour when she comes to Toronto.
Now, we all know how hard these tickets are to get. These are not easy. So I know you are all waiting with bated breath. So Sarah, tell us how they can enter.
Okay, so there's no need to sell your firstborn child. You can enter this contest instead.
Or do sell your firstborn child. Honestly, it might be worth it.
Each week, we give you a different keyword, and this week's keyword is Midnights. Text Midnights and your name to 925-555 to enter for your chance to win. Again, text Midnights, that's MIDNIGHTS, and your name to 925-555.
Thank you to Rogers, the presenting sponsor of Taylor Swift the Eras Tour. Now, standard data and message rates do apply. See contest rules linked in the description of this episode for more details.
And don't worry, Swifties, there will be another keyword in next week's episode. Best of luck!
That's right, we got you covered, guys.
So Kendra James wrote, quote, Lena Dunham and I may have a bit in common, but regardless of what Emily Nussbaum says, I do not consider girls to be for us or by us. Nussbaum's us and Dunham's girls eliminate not only the other 2/3 of Brooklyn that exists, the reality of a majority NYC population, but also the reality that my friends and I are currently living. Once again, we've been erased from a narrative. So, I mean, it's a very powerful critique. Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because it's coming from someone who, wasn't friends with Lena. They didn't know each other well, but she said, like, I could pick her out of a crowd. Like, we overlapped. Yeah. So why is it that Lena's version of New York makes it seem like she didn't go to Oberlin with any people of color, right? And it's a valid question. Following the first season's finale, Julianne Escobedo Shepard wrote an article for Salon that pointed out the absurdity of the show's blatant whiteness problem. And she writes, quote, that in Brooklyn, the most statistically diverse city in the country, the show had not just an all-white starring cast, but also seemed to live in a non-existent part of the borough where people of color were only sparsely scattered in the background. And it's true. Legitimate. It doesn't seem like it's shot in New York. No. It really doesn't.
It's shot in some white utopia.
It looks like, I don't know, like suburban Seattle, right? Like, I mean, even that's more diverse.
Yeah. Ohio.
Yeah, I don't know where. I have not recently seen a place with that many white people.
No.
But wait. I'm sure it exists somewhere.
I want to hear the James Franco criticism, please.
Oh, yes. That's my favorite because it's so out to lunch. And while much of the criticism about representation was insightful and important, alleged sex criminal James Franco also threw his hat into the ring, building on the critiques that the show didn't adequately represent racialized people. He wrote this in the Huffington Post, quote, I've read comments about girls that said in a nutshell, I like the show, but I can't see me in it. I feel the same way. The guys in the show are the biggest bunch of losers I've ever seen. So basically, he thought the guys weren't cool. And he felt that this was worth writing about.
James Franco, I mean, for him, I'm sure that was an art piece. Not to be taken seriously in any capacity.
I don't know. I think he genuinely thought it was offensive that the show didn't have cool guys. I don't know. I don't know. You never know with James Franco.
It's a Judd Apatow show. He didn't get to guest star. What?
He's probably angry he didn't get a check, right? Probably mad that he wasn't cast. Obviously, if he wasn't playing the Adam Driver character, the Adam Driver character
Can you imagine? Okay, I know it's bad to say this, but I actually, in an alternate reality, I would love a version where he plays Adam Driver's character.
Okay. I mean, James Franco
took a giant gulp.
I
was reevaluating our friendship.
In addition to being an alleged sex criminal,
yes.
I don't think he's very talented. I never thought he was.
That's
even
fair.
Before he became problematic. I think he's a bit of a hack. I didn't like how he registered for 1 million grad school programs and didn't attend any. And then when the professors called him out, he'd be like, I phoned to see what I missed. I'm like, yeah, if you don't have time to go to grad school, don't go to grad school, right? And this isn't because he was working 3 jobs to support his family. It's because he was filming movies like Your Highness, a terrible friggin' movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, rich millionaire movie star, take time off to go to grad school or don't register for the program. Don't expect them to just hand you a degree.
Sarah, I think clearly, guys, everyone listening, we will be having an episode soon on rich millionaire movie stars, so count on that. Sarah will be imploding. Okay, coming soon.
Anyway, he just makes me so angry.
No, I get it.
But it's okay. I mean, I'm still friends with lots of people who loved him in the day. This doesn't ruin our friendship.
I loved him in the day. Thank you. In the day, not now.
In the day. He was handsome. I get that. I will never suggest he wasn't. I just hate him. So putting the drivel from James Franco aside, who do we think we should hold most accountable for the lack of representation on Girls? Lena herself, Judd Apatow, who executive produced the show and was a more experienced creator at that point, HBO, who airs the show. Is this an institutional failure or an individual failure?
Oh. Well, you know what? So you addressed this a bit, and I want to bring it back up, but I think so much of this comes back to the fact that she's fat, and she has the audacity to be nude and put herself and present herself as a desirable person on camera. She has the audacity to do all of that, and it pissed so many people off so intensely for so long. Like, if you were around for that period online, it was disgusting and foul. There was never a Sunday when the episode aired and there wasn't commentary like that. And I don't know. I think just the fact that a fat white woman who is not conventionally attractive has to make her own work so that she has work says a lot, because right now that's what a lot of Black and Asian actors have to do, because otherwise they don't get hired. They don't get the meaty roles. They have to make their own work. I'm not putting her on that same level, but I do think there's something there that's quite similar and quite sad and says a lot about just how much the world still very much cares about what someone's body looks like. I think she was rightly critiqued for its lack of diversity. But here's the thing, and maybe I will lose some people here, but a group of 4 white girls who grew up in New York City at the class level these 4 did would not typically have Black or brown best friends. That's just realistic. That's why when Donald Glover and Riz Ahmed were shoehorned in, it felt so silly and gratuitous to me. It just didn't make sense. It doesn't happen. It would have been amazing if they were more authentic, or if we even just had one of the 4 dating or having like a brief fling with a man of color. It would have been amazing. Or as Kendra said, like even just in the background, like where were these people? Where were they at the coffee shop, right? But I had zero interest in seeing a brown woman join this foursome or be one of the 4, because I just didn't feel like it's not about me in that way. I think we just deserve our own shows. I don't want to be shoehorned into an existing show that is about white women. I actually, this is why I was more bothered, and I'm still more bothered, that out of 6 seasons of the Mindy Project, Mindy only hooked up with 1 brown man for the majority of brown women, that's not realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've heard that critique before of the Mindy Project, and yeah, definitely we'll talk more about. We'll do a whole episode on Mindy Kaling for sure, whom I still love, but we'll do a whole episode. I mean, I think that when it comes to girls, it never should have been the show that was expected to represent all millennial women, right? That was a failure of HBO because they have the power to greenlight lots of shows, right? So the fact that this was the first show about millennial women, where millennial women got to be the creators and the stars, but it had no diversity, wouldn't probably have been quite as much of an issue if they had also let other millennial women from different backgrounds make their own shows sooner. And later, HBO did learn their lesson. Like, we got Insecure, which is a great show, right?
Right.
They did diversify a bit. I still think they could do better, but they did diversify a bit. And I feel like it was an institutional failure for which Lena Dunham, who was just sort of a kid who was like, you want to give me a TV show? Of course, was being made the scapegoat, which never sat well with me. I feel like if you are the highly well-paid old male executives at HBO, you should take accountability and say, this isn't really Lena's problem. We should have been giving voices to more people, right? And also, I mean, Judd Apatow was supposed to be her mentor, so he bears some responsibility too. However, there's so much focused on Lena Dunham's vision, and by the end, you know, a lot of her voice is here, but it's not just her vision. They gave her Jenny Connor to work with, who's older and more experienced, and might have told her, you know, maybe when we represent racialized people, it shouldn't feel so gratuitous. Maybe Judd Apatow could have had a conversation, although his movies aren't particularly diverse either.
No, not at all.
So it's like we only discovered the lack of diversity in film and TV when Lena Dunham became a creator, which to me, I once gave back in my other career when I taught university, I gave a lecture on this and said it couldn't be simultaneously true that there are racist microaggressions in girls and the lack of representation is racist, and also be true that some of the people wouldn't be critiquing her if she weren't a young woman. And that there can be racism and sexism present in the same controversy. You can be perpetuating racism in popular culture and simultaneously be the victim of sexism.
And fat phobia.
And fat phobia, absolutely. And I think that's absolutely what happened to her. And suddenly we were finally discussing racism on TV, but it took the fact that people were mad that a woman who existed in a body that was not a sample size and was under 25 had been given an opportunity to have her own show.
Preach. And I will add one other thing, because you really covered the gamut there, Sarah, but I think also when you give someone who's so young a show, they haven't experienced much of the world. She lived in a bubble, very obviously, so that's what she's going to put on screen. So yeah, like you said, I think everybody else involved, that's their job. There's so many people who work on a TV show, especially an HBO show. Where was the POC back there who gets token hired to make a comment about this? Kidding. It shouldn't be their job. But, you know, I think I'm glad these conversations happened in the sense that we're talking about these things now. People care about it. They think about it before they put a show together. But I think it's really problematic that it took a woman who looks like this to pile it all onto, right? It's insane. And it wasn't even that long ago. This was a decade ago. These problems still very much exist. This is not like it's over, okay?
No, it's not at all like it's over. And I also just think one thing that we should remember is there was too much writing on this show. Like, anytime you try to take one woman and market the work she creates like she's the voice of her generation, which is how they marketed it. All the ads had that clip of her saying, I'm the voice of my generation, taken out of context. It's not going to serve everyone. No one person can be their voice of their generation. So HBO heralding this as must-see TV because she was the singular representative for all millennial women was a marketing choice, and it was always going to set her up for failure. So, I mean, I agree that it is bizarre that there was such a lack of diversity. And I mean, I know she went to Brooklyn Prep School, but I went to Toronto Prep School, and yes, prep school is a whiter place than most places, but my husband is a racialized kid who went to prep school, right? So I think the Kendra James critique that there will always be racialized people in any environment and they deserve to be represented, even if you're talking about the specific experience of being a privileged upper middle class kid, is very valid. But I also think this is more than Lena's failure.
100% nailed it.
So in a panel for Sundance TV in 2015, Lena later said of the conversation regarding girls' lack of diversity, "It was an educational, painful process for me because I had been thinking so much about representing weirdo girls and chubby girls and strange half-Jews." Those are her words. And then she later says, "It is our job as creators to represent more than our own experience." Lena also argued the experience of having that controversy over diversity in girls made her a stronger feminist and thinker. So let's move on to her next controversy. But before that, the time has come for a short break. When we return, we will discuss the second Lena scandal of the episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hey you, Bravo's now in Canada.
I just got chills.
If you know Bravo,
I love that. You love that?
you know Vanderpump Rules,
Why does it have to get so complicated?
Summer House,
Don't activate me because you've not seen me activated.
Below Deck,
I'm not your friend. I'm your captain.
Top Chef,
Hi, Chef.
and Housewives. Definitely Housewives.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this.
Bravo, now available.
It's insane.
Subscribe now with your TV service provider. Fall in Canada has never been hotter.
And we are back. Girls itself survived the controversy over its lack of diversity, a problem the show never truly resolved. However, Lena herself never fully escaped controversy of all kinds. Now, we simply don't have time to get into all of the scandals, some legit and some just silly, that engulfed Lena over the years. However, we would be remiss if we didn't go into one of the more viral things that happened. In 2014, Lena released her debut essay collection, Not That Kind of Girl, for Random House. Lena received a reported $3.5 million for the book, and I just want Random House to know that they can have my book of essays on perinatal mental health for a cool $1 million. So call me.
I'll even take
I don't have an agent.
500,000. A solid 500K. I'll take it.
You know what? Realistically, I'll do it for 100,000. I'll do it for 50.
Okay,
I'll do it for 5,000.
We'll take anything.
Just call me. Just call me. In one essay, Lena recounts an incident from when she was 7 years old, so very little, with her sibling Cyrus, and Cyrus was still a baby at this time. Lena writes, "One day, as I sat in our driveway in Long Island playing with blocks and buckets, my curiosity got the best of me. Cyrus was sitting up, babbling and smiling, and I leaned down between their legs and carefully spread their vagina. They didn't resist, and when I saw what was inside, I shrieked. My mother came running. 'Mama, Mama, Cyrus has something in there!' And then Lena goes on to explain that her mother didn't blink, and yes, this was a prank, and anyway, her mother didn't think it was weird because it was, the kind of thing that Lena would do. So then, in response to this passage, many people in the media, particularly the conservative media, decided that Lena Dunham was a pedophile. So this is like a real thing that happened. People said it was sexual abuse. And Lena was 7. Literally, she's like, I was playing with blocks, right?
Yeah.
And then my baby sibling was there. And I'm sorry. This is just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
This is normal.
Yeah.
Cyrus defended Lena. CNN even had a segment where experts debated if this was sexual abuse.
Oh my God.
They agreed. There was a consensus that no,
Of
this is the
course.
type of thing little kids do, right? Like, she was 7, give her a break. Lena herself got really angry and maybe could have been calmer about this, but I would have been livid too.
I know.
Actually.
Yeah.
She took to Twitter to defend herself, and on November 1st, 2014, she said, quote, "The right-wing news story that I molested my little sister isn't just lol, it's really fucking upsetting and disgusting." She added, "Usually this is stuff I can ignore, but don't demean sufferers, don't twist my words, back the fuck up, bros." And for their part, Cyrus publicly said, quote, heteronormativity deems certain behaviors harmful and others normful. The state and media are always invested in maintaining that. That is, I don't think makes sense, but I still love Cyrus. I respect Cyrus. That's a very weird response that I think misses the point.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this whole thing, like the entire world overreacted. I remember having debates with so many of my friends at the time about this, and I ended up feeling like a terrible monster for defending her. It's insane. I actually had no idea until this moment that the conservative media kicked all of this off. That is insanity. You know who I blame, though? I do blame the editor a little bit because the way that it was written, because I remember the way it was written, it does kind of take you off guard, even if it was like, let's say 10, 20 years ago before we were extra worried about these things. Maybe it could have been written a little bit differently, but I don't know. It's a different time, I think. People are a lot more sensitive now about the way we share things like this, right?
People are, but I think that had anyone else written this, because it's about when you're 7 and it's your sibling who is in diapers, and at that time, listen, child sexual abuse is very real. It can happen to kids at any age, but also when kids are still in diapers, even until they're fully toilet trained, people see their genitals. At my daughter's preschool, they have to pee in front of each other, and the teachers have to watch for safety reasons, right? So the expectation of privacy and what that involves, right? Like, you're used to people like lifting you up and smelling you to see if you need a change. You're used to people, wiping you so you don't get a UTI, right? Like, it's just, we need to accept that siblings get used to that as part of the process. Part of taking care of their little baby siblings is paying attention to diapers and paying attention to if they're clean in that area.
I also feel like, oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I feel like there's countless white older male writers, memoirists who wrote shit like this way back when. How many times has David Sedaris said fucked up shit in his books, and everybody just applauds it? Actually, nobody calls that out.
Yeah, it's not weird. She was 7. It's a part of growing up. People were just looking for controversy in this book. And what's really a shame is this overshadowed the fact that Lena Dunham talked about the time she was raped in university in the book. And it's a beautiful essay that really wrestles with the fact that at first she didn't realize she was raped. Someone had to tell her. Like, she understood the events that had happened, and in describing what happened, the sequence of events to a friend told her she was raped. And that was something that was very relatable. It helped a lot of other people understand that they too had been assaulted, which helped them work through that trauma. And instead, we were focusing on this stupid right-wing controversy.
And yet we have one more to go. Tell us about it.
Exactly. Okay. So the third and final controversy we will be discussing today is perhaps the most disappointing. After Girls ended in 2017, Lena was poised to work on a bevy of other high-profile projects. She was a vocal proponent of Hollywood's burgeoning Me Too movement, which aimed to secure justice for the survivors of sexual misconduct. She herself also wrote about surviving sexual assault while at Oberlin in Not That Kind of Girl, as we mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, she decided to accuse a young woman of fabricating sexual assault allegations. In November of 2017, actress Aurora Perrineau filed a sexual assault complaint against Murray Miller, a former writer and executive producer on Girls. Ms. Perrineau alleged the assault took place in 2012 when she was just 17 years old. Murray himself referred to the allegations as, quote, outrageous. While Lena Dunham had heretofore been a proponent of the Me Too movement, she did not hesitate to defend her former colleague. She and Jenny Connor released a statement that read, "During the windfall of deeply necessary accusations over the last few months in Hollywood, we have been thrilled to see so many women's voices heard and dark experiences in this industry justified." It's a... Wait, does that even make sense? Is that what she wrote? Dark experiences in this industry justified? Okay, I'm going to start again.
Hold on.
While Lena Dunham had heretofore been a proponent of... Okay, I don't know. Sorry, Evan.
No, you know what? It does make sense. It's just badly written.
Okay. While Lena Dunham had heretofore been a proponent of the Me Too movement, she did not hesitate to defend her former colleague. She and Jenny Connor released a statement that read, During the windfall of deeply necessary accusations over the last few months in Hollywood, we have been thrilled to see so many women's voices heard and dark experiences in this industry justified. It's a hugely important time of change, and like every feminist in Hollywood and beyond, we celebrate. But during every time of change, there are also incidents of the culture, in its enthusiasm and zeal, taking down the wrong targets. We believe, having worked closely with him for more than half a decade, that this is the case with Murray Miller. While our first instinct is to listen to every woman's story, our insider knowledge of Murray's situation makes us confident that sadly this accusation is one of the 3% of assault cases that are misreported every year. It is a true shame to add to that number, as outside of Hollywood, women still struggle to be believed. We stand by Murray, and this is all we'll be saying about this issue.
Very poorly written statement.
Yeah, it's not a great statement. And these are two people who are usually excellent writers, so I'm not sure what happened there. Ultimately, the authorities declined to press charges against Miller because of what they saw as, quote, inconsistencies with the evidence. It is, however, worth noting that it can be hard to provide accurate testimony, even if an alleged assault really did occur years after the attack took place. So that is a common thing and is an impediment to justice. And of course, people had opinions about the self-identified feminist Lena Dunham dismissing other women's rape allegations. For Fox, Constance Grady wrote this response, quote, "For a self-proclaimed feminist, Dunham's actions were not a good look, to say the least. The structure of our society and legal system is so stacked against victims of sexual assault that believing the victim is a basic pillar of feminism. If we live in a world where the standard response to sexual assault is to find a way to demonstrate that the victim was somehow asking for it, the basic argument goes the least feminist can do is tip the balance the other way by giving victims their support as a default." In a 2018 essay for The Hollywood Reporter, Lena Dunham did an about-face and apologized to Aurora Perrineau in print. "When someone I knew, someone I had loved as a brother, was accused, I did something inexcusable. I publicly spoke up in his defense." Lena also admitted, "There are few acts I could ever regret more in this life. I didn't have the insider information I claimed, but rather blind faith in a story that kept slipping and changing and revealed itself to mean nothing at all."
God.
To Aurora, and she writes later, "To Aurora, you have been on my mind and in my heart every day this year. I love you," which is a little weird to say.
Yeah.
"I will always love you. I will always work to right that wrong. In that way, you have made me a better woman and a better feminist."
Ugh.
She later says, "You shouldn't have been given that job in addition to your other burdens, but here we are, and here I am asking, how do we move forward? Not just you and I, but all of us, living in the gray space between admission and vindication."
Oof.
Sadaf, what do you think about Lena's original defense of Miller, and what do we think about this apology?
It's so bad. It kept getting worse and worse. It's horrific. If anyone has ever needed more publicity, help, a media team, a crisis, something, it is this woman. My God, like, she wrote this shit because it's that bad. No, I mean, she's an amazing writer, but clearly she just vomited this up because she didn't feel apologetic at all, not in any capacity. She's still blaming Aurora in the statement. Why even put this out there? It's disgusting. And I was a fan of Jenny Connors, and this also made me lose respect for her. It's just all around horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that Lena definitely received more scrutiny than Jenny Connor.
I mean, it's
both
fair.
vile
Jenny's
here.
not as in the public eye, right?
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, neither one of them should have done what they did, right? And that it's inexcusable. What do you think possessed them to defend Murray Miller?
I don't know. I think here's the thing. As much as these conversations have been happening for the last little while, especially since Me Too, and we assume that everybody is caught up and has woken up together and is aware and has the right language, that's just not true. Not everybody has caught up. Not everybody thinks the same way. Some people fall behind. Some people don't get it. Some people don't care. Some people are more inclined to believe the person who's closest to them in their life. I can kind of understand that, but I think what is really sad here is that she has a huge platform, and this was a really bad way to use it. She should have thought about that before she put that out there. Like, there's also a difference between how you handle something in private versus in public, and the damage it can do, right, times 10. But in this case, I can hardly understand, really, to be quite honest with you. I think the whole thing was just so poorly handled. Ugh.
And I understand if your initial reaction when somebody you know and care about is accused of sexual assault is to hope it's not true. And I myself have had that reaction, but I didn't then release a press statement saying that it couldn't be true. I just, in my heart, was disappointed in that person and also hoped it wasn't true. But
it's human.
In the end, it was true.
Yeah.
And I never released a press statement suggesting that I had insider knowledge I didn't have.
It's human to want to defend someone who is close to you and to have questions. Absolutely. I get that. But I think where the risk is in using your platform to publicize in such a big way that you think this woman is a liar, when the fact is you don't know the truth. You don't know anything that happened.
Yes, you need to let justice be served. And also, you should believe survivors, especially if you are involved in the Me Too movement. And we all know that even guys who seem really nice can be rapists, right? Lena herself knows that because she was raped by someone in university. So it's important to have empathy and to realize that maybe a guy who was nice to you because you were writing him a check every week was not nice to women where he was in a position of power, right?
Yes.
And that is what happened here, or is what is alleged to have happened with Murray Miller, that he took advantage, allegedly, of a 17-year-old who was not writing him checks and had no power over him. So do we think in this case it was right for Lena to be outright canceled? Because I think by this point, she was just well and truly canceled. Was that fair? Was it not fair?
It's a good question. I think yes, in a lot of ways. I also don't think that a lot of people, particularly of her caliber, ever really get canceled. I don't think that happens, and as we can see, it hasn't happened to her. She keeps on going. She has made about 1 million mistakes, and she keeps on going, right? You mentioned this in the Ryan Reynolds episode last week. Like, for certain celebrities, they can make a mistake 1 million times and they keep getting the chance to keep on coming back. People of color would not get the same opportunity, right? If a Black person had done the same thing, I don't think we would have heard from them again. So I don't think she's been canceled. I think she took a little bit of a break for good reason. I think she should have gone to some media rehab. I think if we didn't ever hear from her again, it would be fully warranted. But we have, and we will be.
Yeah, we have heard from her again. She did take a little bit of a break in the years after her initial defense of Miller. A lot has changed for Lena Dunham. She has largely lived out of the spotlight. Lena has also parted ways with longtime creative partner Jenny Connor and longtime romantic partner Jack Antonoff. She had a hysterectomy. She relocated to the United Kingdom and got married to musician Louis Felber. Lena lives with a medical condition that affects her joints and skin called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she said that led to her becoming addicted to prescription painkillers, but she is now sober, so good for her. Congratulations to Lena on getting sober. She refers to her journey of sobriety as, quote, the greatest thing I ever did, which is, I know a lot of people who have become sober agree and say that it really made their lives better and made them better. Today, Lena is the executive producer and one of the directors of HBO's hit show Industry. Too Much, a show based on her romance with Felber, will also debut on Netflix in 2025. This time, Hacks Megan Stalter will play the character based on Lena Dunham, so she will no longer be portraying herself. Girls has also had a resurgence in popularity, with Gen Z discovering the show and talking about it a lot on TikTok.
Yeah.
They're fans. Yeah. So, Sadaf, would we call this a verified Dunham-assance? Do we think Lena will ever achieve the sort of cultural relevance she enjoyed when Girls premiered in her mid-20s? And do we even want that for her?
Ooh. Okay, well, first, because you touched on this briefly, but I do want to elaborate because it's one of my favorite things about her, and I feel like she doesn't get enough credit for it. But when she opened up about her experience with endometriosis and getting her hysterectomy in Vogue in 2018, that was so important to me, and I know it was to quite a few women who read it at the time. Back then, for some years, I'd been struggling with what I eventually discovered was PCOS, and which recently I've learned might be endo. It's been such a painful and kind of miserable journey. And when I read her story, it actually moved me to try and find a diagnosis. I'd been kind of avoiding it for a while. And it also prepared me for how difficult it can be just to go through that process. So I think that was so pivotal, and also just other celebrities talking about that experience, so bless that. Now, do I think she's having a renaissance moment? No, only because I don't think she's ever left us. She's been pretty consistent, right? As you mentioned, she's been a producer on Industry. She also released a couple pretty good movies during her so-called break. There was Sharp Stick, Catherine Called Birdie, which I quite liked. She's done interviews, she's been around, she's been doing editorials, columns. She's apologizing left and right, still here and there. I hope and pray that now that this new generation has discovered her, though, that maybe she will have this new path where she can have this kind of return, not say foolish shit, and actually get the appreciation that I think she always deserved. But her clownery made it really difficult to give her that, and also everybody else wanting to pile on her made it difficult. I just think she has to shut her mouth, and like speak through your writing. Like you said, she's not playing herself anymore, and God bless. I love Meg Stalter, so I'm excited for that. I think Lena's a good example of someone who, like, as a child and maybe as a teen, was never told to shut the fuck up, and this is kind of that time. I also, like, I love a good writer, you know, and especially women who are of our generation and who are anomalies in some ways. So I am rooting for her. Don't embarrass me, Lena. It's happened many times. I'm sure it will happen again. And I want to say, though, for everybody else, have a mind of your own. I want to reiterate that. And for Lena, I hope that at this point, your world has gotten a little bit bigger. You've been traveling, you've been reading books from different perspectives. You do more than, like, get butter chicken for takeout. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, Lena, I think now, let's hope, because she's 38, has wisdom in addition to talent.
Yeah.
She always had talent. I'm never going to say that she wasn't talented. She's always had raw talent. I think now she has experience and wisdom. So I expect better from her.
Yes.
So we'll see if she delivers on that. But, you know, rewatching Girls is so satisfying. I really relate to the Ray character.
Me too. Oh, wait, by the way, who are you on the cast? We didn't talk about it.
Ray. Like, I really do feel like I'm Ray,
That's
which
so
makes me realize
funny.
I need to make some personality changes, because he's so curmudgeonly. He just rails about everything. But by the end, he actually has a lovely arc where he takes his propensity for complaining and then gets into municipal politics. I actually quite liked that for him. Like, he realizes he needs to do better and actually make an impact. You can't just complain. So that was really inspiring. I haven't run for city council. I can't claim to have had that type of
But I
evolution.
can see you doing that one day. I'm so sorry, you are absolutely a Ray. It didn't even occur to me until you said it, but I love that so much.
Yeah.
I don't know who I am. I think I've cycled between all of them except Marnie. I will never in my life be a Marnie. Thank you, God. But I think, like, especially when I watched it from the beginning, I, like, way back when, I felt like a little bit of a Shoshana. Then I felt like a little bit of a Hannah, sorry to say. I felt more like Jemima Kirk's character some of these days, but I don't know, maybe a compilation? I don't know.
It's like no one has ever been Marnie. It's so interesting that you said, like, you've never related to her, because she's, I think, like, just Judd Apatow, from what I have read, basically said they needed a character like that.
Well, didn't
she's not realistic.
Taylor Swift, our good friend of the show, who had considered herself a Shoshana, and I think, wasn't it Lena, who's also her friend, who said, actually, I think you're a Marnie?
That's a mean thing to say about your friend.
I think it's true.
I don't know. Well, I guess, okay, I should say, sometimes I'm hard on Marnie. Season 1 Marnie is really annoying because I think they fully didn't understand the character. Later on, she is interesting and actually pretty self-aware. She starts taking responsibility for her problems. She does have talent and she is intelligent, but she has to let go of the idea that life is supposed to be easy. And then she does let go of that by the end. So I think maybe I should, my Marnie in my head is season 1.
Okay.
And if you compare someone to season 1 Marnie, I think that's an unforgivable.
That's fair.
But if you compare her to season 5 or season 6 Marnie, actually, it's fine. She's no more objectionable than the other characters by that point.
I mean, I found her consistently awful. I'm not sure she did have talent. The one thing I will say to her credit, spoiler alert, is that she proves to be the friend who sticks around for Hannah. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's
she proves to be loyal. And later, to her credit, is like embarrassed by how long her extended absence has lasted, right? She has that self-awareness. Like in the finale, spoiler alert, right? It's another ill-advised engagement, right? Like we've done that before. It's another one. No one seems to be self-aware about this. Jemima Kirk, Jess's back to her being her enfant horrible. She's back to that. And the only two people who are ready to leave the party are Hannah and Marnie doesn't yet know what she wants to do, but she is self-aware enough to know she shouldn't be there anymore. Right. She needs to grow up.
I'm going to disagree with you. With your earlier point, because I think there are a lot of Marnies out there. I know quite a few Marnies, and I think what's the goal is, if you know that you are a Marnie, have a trajectory. Okay, push yourself to evolve, because I agree with you. She does in the show. You all can do it in real life. I encourage you. Anyway.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I feel like Taylor Swift is way too hardworking to have ever been a Marnie, right? Marnie is the laziest character.
That's true. You're right. That's a fair point. Okay, fine.
They're all lazy, but she's the laziest. Like, if I had to say who Taylor Swift was, I would say Shoshana, because she's the most entrepreneurial.
But I think Shoshana has a naivete that Taylor does not have. Okay, see, now we're going too far.
Okay, this could be an hour-long conversation about which girl Taylor Swift is.
Yeah.
Like, it could be so long. Okay. All right. This brings us to our final segment, Hindsight is 2024, where we choose the one moment that we might have handled differently if we were the subject of the story. So, Sadaf, what would you have done differently if you were Lena Dunham?
I think you and I are probably on the same page here. We would have probably handled the Aurora Perrineau situation completely differently. If I wish that she hadn't made the statement she did. I wish that she had thought before she spoke, but I will add on one other fun thing that I wish she'd done differently, because this haunts me. I'm so sorry, yet another spoiler alert for girls, but at the very end, she has a child with Riz Ahmed, but that baby is quite pale and does not look remotely brown to me, and it has haunted me since that day. Lena Dunham, who was that baby? Where was the half brown baby?
Who was the baby? Yeah. My daughter is...
your child is not super pale. Like, you can tell she's a mix to me.
I guess. So. When she was born,
maybe not when
people made comments about her looking very white.
Okay, fair enough.
So I don't know. A lot of babies are paler at first. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know who the baby was.
You know maybe what? That's fair. You have real life experience.
I don't know. I know my daughter has blue eyes, and I don't even have blue eyes, so we're all confused. But genetics are fascinating. So who knows? Who knows? But you're right. It is like they tried to cast the whitest baby possible to play this biracial baby.
I'm just saying. Anyway, what about for you, Sarah? Is it also the Aurora situation?
So obviously the Aurora Perrineau situation. Another thing that I wouldn't have done, which we didn't even have time to talk about today, just like we didn't have time to talk about Lenny Letter, which I quite liked, but we didn't have time to talk about camping and how atrocious bad camping
wasn't good.
Why is that your follow-up to Girls? One of the most culturally relevant shows of the 21st century. It's a remake of a British series about camp.
You know what, though?
Why?
It had a fun cast. I know a few people who enjoyed it. Maybe it was like a little break for her because it's so different from Girls. But yeah, it wasn't the best. But hey, you know what? This is what happens when HBO gives you like full steam ahead, do whatever you want, and nobody is chipping in to say maybe not that. Anyway.
This is her if.
It's her if.
Like, John Krasinski's If, which is also terrible. This is her if. Camping is her if.
We love that we squeezed in John Krasinski dig right at the end.
Every episode. Gotta fit in one.
Okay, you know what? We should make that a thing. Okay, guys, if an episode goes by and there's not a Krasinski dig, please email us immediately. I'll slap Sarah. That's what will happen.
Okay. All right. So I guess they're like aiding and abetting like assault.
Okay.
Or I don't know what can you aid and abet us? I don't know. I think you can. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
They're gonna become accessories. Okay, sorry, I take that back. Okay, fine. No, I'll just send her angry emojis. Moving on.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you to our wonderful editor, Evan Wexler, and thank you to our listeners. We are nothing without you. If you want to hear more from me, you can find me on Twitter at Sarah Sahagian. Sadaf, where can our listeners find you?
Listeners can find me at _Sadaf Hassan. And if you like this podcast, you know what I'm going to say. Please rate, review, and subscribe so other listeners can find us. And if you'd like us to keep growing, and I know you do, we'd love for you to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The where we've got some very good treats in store for you, if I do say so myself. And remember, you can listen to The Reheat for free on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Hey, you! Bravo's now in Canada.
I just got chills.
If you know Bravo,
I love that. You love that?
you know Vanderpump Rules,
Why does it have to get so complicated?
Summer House,
Don't activate me because you've not seen me activated.
Below Deck,
I'm not your friend. I'm your captain.
Top Chef,
Hi, Chef.
and Housewives. Definitely Housewives.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to this.
Bravo, now available.
It's insane.
Subscribe now with your TV service provider. Fall in Canada has never been hotter.